The shy 26-year-old waitress's daughter hands a letter to the 33-year-old mafia boss. What he reads reveals a painful truth and brings him to tears. Before we dive in, let's light up this comment section with hearts from every corner of the world. The rain hammered against the windows of Castello's, the upscale Italian restaurant where dominance and influence converged over expensive wine and hushed conversations. Vincent Moretti sat in his usual corner booth, the one that offered a clear view of every entrance and exit. A habit born from years of surviving in a world where trust was currency and betrayal was cheap. At 33, Vincent controlled the underground of the entire Eastern District with an iron fist wrapped in expensive Italian leather. His name alone made grown men reconsider their life choices. The Moretti family didn't just run the city's shadows. They owned them, commanded them, shaped them into an empire that politicians whispered about and rivals feared to challenge. Tonight, however, Vincent's mind wandered from business. 7 years. 7 years since that night. The night that haunted him more than any war he'd orchestrated, any rival he'd eliminated from the board. The night he'd felt something other than the cold calculation that kept him alive. "Your usual, Mr. Moretti?" The sommelier approached with practiced deference, never quite meeting Vincent's eyes. The mark of someone who understood exactly who sat before them. "Something stronger tonight, Marcus." Vincent's voice carried the weight of someone accustomed to obedience. "The Macallan, neat." As Marcus retreated, Vincent's second-in-command, Tony, slid into the booth across from him. Tony had been with the family for 15 years, loyal as a wolf and twice as dangerous when necessary. "The Castellano situation is handled. They won't be a problem anymore." Vincent nodded, his expression revealing nothing. In their world, handled meant a dozen different things, none of them pleasant, all of them permanent. "And the shipment?" "Clean. No complications." Tony paused, studying his boss with the familiarity of long association. "You seem distracted, Vin. That's not like you." Before Vincent could respond, movement near the kitchen caught his attention. A woman emerged carrying a tray, her movements efficient despite the obvious exhaustion that clung to her like a second skin. She wore the restaurant's standard uniform, black slacks and white blouse beneath a crisp apron. But something about her made Vincent's breath catch in his throat. Recognition slammed into him like a freight train. Emma. 7 years hadn't diminished her quiet beauty. If anything, time had refined it, added depth to features he'd memorized in a single night. Her light brown hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and shadows bruised the delicate skin beneath her eyes. She looked thinner than he remembered, more fragile, like glass that had been struck one too many times but refused to shatter. She hadn't seen him. She moved between tables with practiced grace, smiling at customers with a warmth that never quite reached her eyes. Vincent watched, transfixed, as memories he'd buried deep clawed their way to the surface. One night. They'd had one perfect night 7 years ago at a charity gala where she'd been serving champagne, and he'd been playing the role of legitimate businessman. She'd dropped a glass near his table, and instead of the fear he usually inspired, she'd looked at him with curiosity. They'd talked. Actually talked. For the first time in his adult life, Vincent had felt seen as something other than a title, a reputation, a threat. They'd ended up in his penthouse, and for those few hours, Vincent had forgotten about empires and blood and the weight of his family name. In the morning, she was gone. He'd looked for her, discreetly of course, but Emma had vanished like smoke, and eventually, Vincent convinced himself it was better that way. His world devoured innocence. She deserved better than to be destroyed by proximity to him. "Vin?" Tony's voice cut through the memory. "You good?" Vincent tore his gaze away, his jaw tight. "Fine. We're done here. I'll handle the rest tomorrow." But as Tony left and Vincent prepared to follow, fate intervened. Emma turned toward the kitchen, her tray empty, and finally, inevitably, her eyes found his. The tray clattered to the floor. Time froze. Vincent saw fear flash across her face, followed by something more complex. Recognition, certainly, but also resignation, as if she'd been waiting for this moment and dreading it in equal measure. She recovered quickly, bending to retrieve the tray with shaking hands. A colleague rushed to help her, but Emma waved them off, her eyes never leaving Vincent's face. He saw her throat work as she swallowed, saw the moment she made a decision. She walked toward him. Every instinct Vincent possessed screamed danger, but not the kind he was accustomed to. This was different. This was the kind of danger that came from caring, from vulnerability, from the terrible recognition that some part of him had never stopped looking for her in crowds, in shadows, in the spaces between heartbeats. Mr. Moretti. Her voice was barely above a whisper, professional and distant, nothing like the warmth he remembered. It's been a long time. Emma. Her name tasted like regret and possibility. I looked for you. Something flickered in her expression. Pain, maybe, or fear. I know. I made sure you wouldn't find me. Why? The question emerged rougher than he intended. She glanced around the restaurant, acutely aware of watching eyes and listening ears. In Vincent's world, even walls had loyalty. This isn't the place, and I'm working. I can't— When does your shift end? Vincent interrupted, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. Emma's hands twisted in her apron. Mr. Moretti, please. 7 years ago was a mistake. I was young and stupid, and you were— She stopped, seemingly unable to find words that wouldn't sound like accusation or admission. I was— What? Vincent leaned forward, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet that made rivals confess sins and allies reconsider betrayals. Say it, Emma. I was what? Dangerous. The word fell between them like a stone in still water. You were dangerous then, and you're dangerous now. I have responsibilities. I won't get pulled into your world again. Responsibilities? Vincent's instincts sharpened. What responsibilities? But Emma was already backing away, her face pale, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I have to get back to work. Please, just forget you saw me. Forget we ever— Emma! A sharp voice cut across the restaurant. The manager, a thin man with calculating eyes who definitely knew who Vincent Moretti was and what happened to people who displeased him. Is Mr. Moretti being properly attended to? Yes, sir, Emma said quickly. She was just perfect, Vincent interjected smoothly, his smile not reaching his eyes. In fact, I'd like to request her service for all my future visits. Specifically. The manager's expression brightened with the kind of greed that came from understanding opportunity. Of course, Mr. Moretti. Emma will be personally assigned to your table whenever you dine with us. Vincent watched Emma's face drain of remaining color, saw the trapped look in her eyes, and felt something dark and possessive curl in his chest. 7 years ago, he'd let her go because it was right, because she deserved better. But fate had thrown her back into his orbit, and Vincent Moretti didn't believe in second chances. He believed in taking what was his and protecting it with everything he had. Perfect, Vincent said softly, his eyes never leaving Emma's face. I'll be dining here much more frequently. As Emma turned away, her shoulders rigid with tension, Vincent made a decision. He would discover what she'd been hiding for 7 years, what secrets had kept her running, what responsibilities bound her so tightly she'd risk working in a restaurant frequented by the man she'd fled. And then he would decide whether to protect her from the truth or drag it into the light. Outside, lightning split the sky, and thunder rolled across the city like a promise of storms to come. Vincent returned to Castello's every night for a week. Each time, Emma served him with professional detachment, her movements careful, her words minimal. She never met his eyes for more than a second, never lingered at his table, never gave him an opening to push past the walls she'd constructed. It was driving him insane. You're obsessed, Tony observed on the 5th night, watching Vincent nurse his 3rd whiskey while Emma moved between tables like a ghost. This isn't healthy, boss. When was the last time you attended a family meeting? Marco's getting antsy about the new territories, and the Castellano remnants are making noise about... I don't care. Vincent's voice was flat, final. Handle it. Tony fell silent, but Vincent felt his disapproval like a weight. His second wasn't wrong. The Moretti Empire required constant attention, constant strength. Distraction was weakness, and weakness was death. But Vincent couldn't stop watching Emma, couldn't stop cataloging the way exhaustion carved deeper lines around her mouth each night, the way her hands sometimes trembled when she thought no one was looking. She was hiding something. Something big. And Vincent's instincts, honed by years of reading lies and parsing truths from shadows, screamed that whatever Emma was hiding, it concerned him directly. On the 7th night, Vincent's patience shattered. He waited until Emma's shift ended, watching from his car as she emerged from the restaurant's back entrance, her coat pulled tight against the autumn chill. She walked quickly, her head down, moving through shadows with the practice of someone who'd learned to be invisible. Vincent followed. She lived in a part of the city that made his jaw clench, the kind of neighborhood where streetlights stayed broken and police only came when bodies needed collecting. The apartment building was a concrete testimony to neglect, its walls tagged with territorial markers from gangs too small to matter, but dangerous enough to prey on the vulnerable. Emma climbed 3 flights of stairs, her steps heavy with exhaustion. Vincent waited until she disappeared into apartment 3C, then made his own way up, his expensive shoes silent on stained concrete. He raised his hand to knock, then froze. Voices. Emma's. Soft and warm in a way he'd never heard. And another voice. Small. Young. A child. Mommy. You're home! Vincent's hand dropped. The world tilted sideways. Mommy. Hi, sweetheart. Emma's voice trembled with emotion. Were you good for Mrs. Chen? Super good. She let me have cookies, and I did all my homework, and... The child's voice bubbled with innocent joy, each word a knife in Vincent's chest. A child. Emma had a child. Of course she did. 7 years was a lifetime. She'd moved on, built a life, found someone who could give her normalcy and safety and all the things Vincent's world couldn't offer. It explained everything. Why she'd run, why she'd hidden, why seeing him again had drained the color from her face. Vincent should leave. Should walk away and let Emma keep the life she'd built far from the violence and darkness that defined his existence. It was the right thing to do, the decent thing, and Vincent Moretti hadn't made his name by being either right or decent. He knocked before he could reconsider. The voices inside stopped abruptly. Footsteps approached, cautious. Who is it? It's me, Emma. Vincent kept his voice low, non-threatening. We need to talk. Silence stretched so long, Vincent thought she might refuse. Then locks clicked, chains rattled, and the door opened just wide enough for Emma to slip through, pulling it almost closed behind her. She looked terrified. You can't be here, she hissed, glancing back toward the apartment. Please, Vincent, you have to go. You have a child. Vincent studied her face, searching for confirmation, for denial, for anything that would make sense of the churning in his gut. Emma's eyes closed briefly. Yes. The father? Vincent's voice came out rougher than intended, possessiveness and something dangerously close to jealousy making his hands curl into fists. Gone. It's just us. Emma wrapped her arms around herself, and Vincent realized how thin she'd become, how the bones of her wrists pressed sharp against pale skin. Please, Vincent. If you ever cared about me at all, you'll walk away right now. My daughter doesn't need... Daughter. The word felt significant, though Vincent couldn't explain why. How old? Emma's jaw clenched. That's none of your business. How? Old. The command in his voice made Emma flinch, but she lifted her chin with defiance that reminded Vincent exactly why he'd never been able to forget her. 7. She just turned 7. The world stopped. 7 years old. 7 years since that night. 7 years since Emma had vanished without explanation, running from something, or someone, with such desperation she'd buried herself in poverty and shadows rather than risk being found. Vincent's mind raced through possibilities, through implications, through the mathematics that couldn't be coincidence. Emma, look at me. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face now. Please don't do this. Please just go. Is she mine? The question hung between them like a guillotine blade, sharp and inevitable. Emma's silence was answer enough, but Vincent needed to hear it, needed the confirmation that would upend everything he thought he knew about himself, about his life, about the empire he'd built on the foundation of having nothing left to lose. I asked you a question, Vincent said, his voice deadly quiet. Is she mine? Ah, you told me you were sterile. Emma's words came out broken, desperate. That night you said the doctors told you that you could never have children. That's why I thought the doctors were wrong. Vincent's world fractured and reformed around this impossible truth. I have a daughter. No. Emma stepped back, shaking her head frantically. No, you have nothing. She's mine. I've raised her, cared for her, protected her from me? The accusation landed like a physical blow. You protected my daughter from me for 7 years? You let me believe I would die without legacy, without heir, without anyone to carry forward what I've built? Vincent stopped, his breath coming hard, emotion threatening to crack the iron control he'd maintained for decades. Anger warred with something more profound, a sense of loss for years he couldn't reclaim, for moments he'd never witness, for a child who didn't know his name. I was protecting her, Emma whispered. Your world kills people, Vincent. It corrupts and destroys everything it touches. I wouldn't let that darkness touch my baby. Our baby. The possessive nearly broke him. Let me see her. Absolutely not. Emma. Vincent stepped closer, and Emma retreated until her back hit the wall. I'm not asking. That little girl in there is my blood, my daughter. And one way or another, I will meet her. The question is whether we do this your way, controlled, calm, on your terms, or whether I use every resource at my disposal to take what's mine by right. The threat was implicit, brutal, and Vincent hated himself for making it. But he'd spent his entire adult life taking calculated risks, making hard choices, and refusing to let sentiment override strategy. This was different. This was his child, his daughter. 7 years of her life had been stolen from him, and he would not, could not, walk away without claiming what remained. Emma's face crumpled. If I let you meet her, will you promise to leave us alone after? Will you promise not to drag her into your world of violence and crime and— I can't promise that. Vincent forced honesty through the rage and confusion churning in his chest. I can promise I won't harm her. I can promise I'll provide for her, protect her with everything I have. But walk away and pretend she doesn't exist? Pretend I don't have a daughter? He shook his head slowly. I won't do that. I can't. Emma stared at him for a long moment, seeming to see past the reputation and the power to something deeper. Something Vincent had thought died years ago. Whatever she found in his expression made her shoulders sag in defeat. One meeting, she said finally. One. And if she's scared, if she's uncomfortable, you leave immediately. Do you understand? Vincent nodded, not trusting his voice. Emma pushed away from the wall and opened the door wider. Come in. But Vincent? If you do anything to frighten her, I will find a way to disappear so completely you'll never find us again. Don't test me on this. Vincent followed her inside, his heart pounding harder than it had during any confrontation, any war, any moment when his life hung by threads. The apartment was small but immaculately clean, the furniture worn but cared for. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator, and books lined makeshift shelves constructed from boards and bricks. And there, Curled on a threadbare couch with a book too advanced for her age, sat a little girl with Vincent's dark hair and Emma's blue eyes. His daughter. She looked up as they entered, and Vincent felt his world shift on its axis. She had his nose, his chin, Emma's delicate features, and something wholly her own, a serious expression that suggested intelligence beyond her years and a wariness that no 7-year-old should possess. "Mommy." The girl's eyes moved from Emma to Vincent, curiosity replacing caution. "Who's that?" Emma crouched beside the couch, brushing hair from her daughter's face with infinite tenderness. "This is an old friend, sweetheart. His name is Vincent. He's going to talk with us for a little while. Is that okay?" The girl studied Vincent with unsettling intensity, as if measuring him against some internal standard. Then she nodded. "Okay. But I have to finish this chapter first. It's really good." Despite everything, Vincent felt his lips twitch. "What are you reading?" She held up the book, Charlotte's Web, and Vincent felt something crack inside his chest. It's about a pig and a spider who are best friends, even though they're really different. The spider saves the pig's life by writing words in her web. It's sad, but also beautiful. "Sounds like a good story," Vincent managed, his voice rough. "The best." She smiled, and Vincent saw himself in that expression, saw Emma, saw something miraculous and terrifying that he'd never expected to have. "Do you like to read?" "I do." "What's your favorite book?" Emma tried to interrupt. "Sophia, honey, maybe Mr. Vincent doesn't—" "The Count of Monte Cristo," Vincent said, his eyes never leaving his daughter's face. "Sophia. Her name was Sophia. It's about a man who loses everything but finds a way to reclaim his life." Sophia nodded seriously. "That sounds sad too, but good sad, like Charlotte's Web." "Yeah," Vincent agreed softly. "Good sad." They talked for another 20 minutes, about books and school and Sophia's dream of becoming a veterinarian someday. She was brilliant, curious, kind in ways Vincent had forgotten existed in the world. Every smile, every laugh, every moment of connection carved away another piece of the armor Vincent had worn for so long, he'd forgotten what lay beneath. Finally, Emma stood. "Okay, sweetheart, it's past your bedtime. Say goodnight to Mr. Vincent." "Good night, Mr. Vincent," Sophia said obediently, then paused. "Will you come back? You're nice. And Mommy doesn't have many friends." Vincent looked at Emma, saw the fear and resignation in her eyes, and made a choice that would change everything. "If your mother allows it, I'd like that very much." After Sophia reluctantly retreated to what must be the apartment's only bedroom, Emma turned to Vincent with tears streaming down her face. "Are you satisfied? You've met her. She's wonderful and perfect, and she doesn't need your world destroying what we've built. So please, Vincent, please just—" "I want to provide for her." Vincent's voice was steady, controlled, revealing none of the chaos beneath. "For both of you. This apartment, this neighborhood, it's not safe. Let me move you somewhere better, somewhere. We don't need your money." "You're barely surviving," Vincent countered, gesturing at the evidence of poverty surrounding them. "Emma, I have resources. Let me use them. Let me take care of my daughter." "At what cost?" Emma's voice broke. "What do I have to sacrifice for your help? My independence? My choices? Nothing." The word came out fierce, absolute. "You sacrifice nothing. I'm not asking for control or ownership or anything beyond the right to know my daughter, to be part of her life in whatever capacity you'll allow." Emma searched his face, looking for the lie, the manipulation, the angle that Vincent always had in business dealings and family negotiations. But this wasn't business. This was blood. This was the closest thing to redemption Vincent would ever touch. "I need time," Emma said finally. "To think. To figure out how this could possibly work. You're asking me to trust the most dangerous man in the city with the person I love most in the world. That's not a decision I make lightly." Vincent nodded, already planning, already strategizing how to prove himself, how to become the man his daughter deserved rather than the monster his reputation suggested. I'll give you 3 days. Then we talk again, negotiate terms, figure this out together. As Vincent left the apartment, his mind was already cataloging everything he'd seen. The broken locks that wouldn't survive a determined intrusion, the windows that overlooked fire escapes accessible from the street, the neighbors whose suspicious eyes and calculating expressions suggested they'd sell information to anyone willing to pay. His daughter was living in danger, and Vincent Moretti protected what was his with lethal efficiency. By morning, he would have security watching the building. By the week's end, he would have solutions that Emma wouldn't be able to refuse. And eventually, he would find a way to be the father Sophia deserved, even if it meant confronting the darkest parts of himself and burning away everything that made him a monster. For the first time in his adult life, Vincent had something worth being better for, and God help anyone who threatened it. 3 days turned into 3 weeks of careful negotiation. Emma, despite her fear, proved to be a formidable opponent when protecting her daughter. She refused Vincent's money, rejected his offers of a new apartment, and maintained strict boundaries around when and where he could see Sophia. But she didn't refuse him completely. Vincent found himself in that threadbare apartment twice a week, reading with Sophia, helping with homework that seemed absurdly simple but felt profoundly important, learning how to be gentle when his entire life had trained him for the opposite. Sophia accepted his presence with the easy trust of children who hadn't yet learned to fear titles and reputations. To her, he was just Mr. Vincent, the man who brought books and listened to her stories and made her mother smile in ways that suggested happiness lived somewhere beneath the exhaustion. Emma watched him with wary eyes, always ready to intervene, always maintaining distance even as Vincent fell deeper into love with a daughter he'd never expected to have. Tonight marked their 8th visit. Vincent arrived with a children's encyclopedia about animals, knowing Sophia's veterinary dreams, and found Emma in the kitchen, her hands braced against the counter, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "Emma?" Vincent set down the book, alarm spiking through him. "What's wrong?" She spun around, swiping at her eyes, but not before Vincent saw the fear naked on her face. "Nothing. I'm fine. Sophia's in her room. She'll be out in—" "Don't lie to me." Vincent crossed the small space between them, his instincts screaming danger. "What happened?" Emma's laugh was broken, bitter. "You want to know what happened?" "Life happened, Vincent. Reality happened. The truth I've been running from for 7 years finally caught up." Vincent's hands clenched. "Someone threatened you. Tell me who, and I'll—" "No one threatened me." Emma's voice cracked. "It's worse than that. It's so much worse, and I don't know what to do. I don't know how to—" She collapsed against the counter, and Vincent caught her before she fell, his arms coming around her instinctively. She felt too thin, too fragile, like she might shatter under the weight of whatever burden she carried. "Tell me," Vincent commanded softly. "Whatever it is, we'll handle it together." Emma pulled back, her eyes red and swollen, and Vincent saw something that terrified him more than any rival's gun or enemy's threat: resignation. The look of someone who'd accepted defeat, who'd stopped fighting because victory was impossible. "I'm dying, Vincent." The words hung in the air, incomprehensible. Vincent's brain refused to process them, rejected them as impossible. "What?" "Stage 4 pancreatic cancer." Emma's voice was flat, mechanical, as if reciting someone else's diagnosis. "They found it 3 months ago. I've been doing treatments, but it's aggressive. The doctors give me maybe 6 months. Maybe less." Vincent's world tilted violently. No, there are treatments, specialists. I know people. I can get you into any facility, any experimental program. Money won't fix this." Emma's laugh was hollow. "Trust me, I've researched. I've looked into everything, called every number, begged every doctor. It's too advanced, spread too far. The best they can offer is time, months, not years. Certainly not long enough to see Sophia grow up." The grief in her voice nearly drove Vincent to his knees. He thought of Sophia, brilliant and curious, and full of dreams about saving animals and reading every book ever written. He thought of her losing Emma, losing the center of her world, facing orphanhood in a city that devoured the vulnerable without mercy. That's why you've been working so hard, Vincent realized, pieces clicking into horrible place. You're trying to save money for after you're gone. Emma finished the thought he couldn't. I'm trying to leave enough for whoever takes her. I have a small life insurance policy and I've been saving every penny. Mrs. Chen next door said she'd take Sophia if something happened to me, but she's 73 and already struggling. I don't have family. No siblings, no parents who are still alive. There's no one. Vincent's mind raced through implications, through terrible mathematics of loss and responsibility. Sophia doesn't know? God, no. Emma's voice broke. How do I tell a 7-year-old that her mother is dying? How do I explain that she'll be alone? I can't. Vincent, I can't do this to her. She won't be alone. The words emerged before Vincent consciously formed them, driven by certainty that bypassed thought and landed directly in truth. She has me. Emma shook her head frantically. No. Vincent, you can't. You don't understand what you're offering. Raising a child isn't like running your empire. It's constant and exhausting, and it requires being present in ways you've never... She's my daughter. Vincent's voice was steel, wrapped in desperation. I won't let her go into the system, won't let her be raised by strangers who see her as obligation rather than miracle. Emma, I'm her father. That means something. Does it? Emma challenged, anger flashing through grief. You've known about her for 3 weeks. You've played nice, brought books, acted interested. But when I'm gone, when reality sets in and you're responsible for every decision, every problem, every nightmare and fever and parent-teacher conference, will it still mean something then? Or will you hand her off to nannies and boarding schools while you run your criminal empire? The accusation stung because Emma wasn't entirely wrong. Vincent had never imagined himself as a father, had built a life specifically designed around having nothing to lose. But looking at Emma, dying, desperate, fighting to protect their daughter even from beyond the grave, Vincent felt something fundamental shift in his priorities. I won't abandon her, he said quietly. Whatever it takes, however I need to change, I will keep Sophia safe. I promise you that. Emma studied him for a long moment, seeming to measure the promise against probability. Finally, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope, her hands shaking. I wrote this last week. When I realized I was out of time, out of options, I was going to have Sophia bring it to Costello's. Let her walk up to your table and hand it over while I watched from the shadows. Vincent took the envelope, his name written in Emma's careful handwriting across the front. What is it? The truth. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. About Sophia, about why I ran, about the cancer and what I'm asking you to do. I hoped, that if you read it, if you understood everything, you might consider taking her when I'm gone. But then you showed up at my door, and I've been watching you with her, and Vincent. Tears streamed down her face. You love her. I can see it. You actually love her. Of course I love her. Vincent's throat tightened. She's brilliant and kind and everything good I never thought I could have. How could I not love her? Then prove it. Emma grabbed his hands, her grip surprisingly strong. When I'm gone, be the father she deserves. Not the crime lord, not the ruthless businessman, not the man everyone fears. Be the person who reads her stories and helps with homework and shows up to school plays. Promise me, Vincent. Promise me she'll be loved. I promise. Vincent pulled Emma into his arms, feeling her shake with sobs that had been held too long, contained too tightly. I promise, Emma. I'll love her enough for both of us. They stood there in that tiny kitchen, holding each other while grief and fear and desperate hope swirled around them like a storm. Vincent had faced death 1,000 times in his career, had dealt it out with calculated precision when necessary. But this was different. This was losing someone who mattered, Someone who'd given him the greatest gift of his life, even while hiding from him for 7 years. "I'm sorry," Emma whispered against his chest. "I'm sorry I kept her from you. I thought I was protecting her, but maybe I was just scared. Scared of what you'd do, how you'd react, whether you'd want her at all. I want her more than anything." Vincent's voice was rough with emotion. "And Emma, I'm going to get you the best care available. Every specialist, every treatment option, every—" "Vincent." Emma pulled back, her expression soft with something between gratitude and resignation. "Don't make promises you can't keep. Just help me make the time I have left count. Help me prepare Sophia for a future without me. That's all I'm asking." Before Vincent could respond, Sophia's door opened. She emerged wearing unicorn pajamas, her dark hair tangled from play, her eyes bright with innocent joy that didn't yet know how to recognize grief. "Mr. Vincent." She ran to him, her small arms wrapping around his legs in an embrace that shattered something in his chest. "You brought a book. Is it about animals? Can we read it now?" Vincent looked at Emma over Sophia's head, saw the plea in her eyes. "Pretend everything is normal. Keep the darkness at bay just a little longer." "Of course we can," Vincent said, scooping Sophia into his arms with a gentleness he'd never known he possessed. "But first, I have a question. How would you feel about spending more time with me? Maybe staying at my place sometimes?" Sophia's eyes went wide. "Like a sleepover?" "Exactly like a sleepover." Vincent glanced at Emma, who nodded permission through her tears. "Would you like that? Can I bring my books?" "You can bring whatever makes you happy." "Then yes." Sophia bounced in his arms. "This is the best day ever. Mommy, did you hear? I get to have sleepovers with Mr. Vincent." Emma smiled, but Vincent saw the grief beneath it, saw the mother trying to memorize every detail of her daughter's joy before time ran out. "I heard, sweetheart. It sounds wonderful." As they settled on the couch with the animal encyclopedia, Sophia chattering about her favorite creatures and asking questions faster than Vincent could answer, he felt Emma's eyes on him. When he looked up, she mouthed 2 words that carried the weight of trust, hope, and goodbye all at once. "Thank you." Vincent nodded, holding his daughter close, and made a silent vow to the woman who'd given him everything. He would be worthy of this gift. He would become the man Sophia needed, even if it meant burning down every part of himself that didn't serve that purpose. He would be her father. And when the time came, when Emma's light finally flickered out and Sophia faced the darkness of loss, Vincent Moretti would be there to catch her, to hold her, to love her with a fierceness that would redefine everything he thought he knew about himself. For the first time in his life, Vincent had a purpose beyond power. He had a daughter to protect, and that changed absolutely everything. The next 3 months became a carefully choreographed dance between 2 worlds. Vincent restructured his entire life around Sophia's schedule: school pickups, doctor's appointments, bedtime stories that stretched long past when Emma's strength gave out. He moved them into a secure penthouse across town, somewhere with actual locks and security systems and neighbors who weren't calculating how much information was worth on the street. Emma protested initially, but exhaustion and practicality won. The treatments were draining what little energy she had left, and watching Vincent transform from feared crime lord into devoted father eased something in her heart she hadn't realized was still bleeding. Vincent handled his empire from home when possible, conducting business calls while Sophia colored at his feet, issuing orders that shaped the underground while simultaneously helping with second-grade math homework. Tony watched the transformation with equal parts confusion and respect. "You're different," Tony observed one afternoon, finding Vincent reading Harry Potter to Sophia on the penthouse couch instead of attending the weekly family meeting. "Softer." "Not softer," Vincent corrected, his hand unconsciously smoothing Sophia's hair as she dozed against his shoulder. "More focused. Everything I do now serves one purpose: keeping her safe. The Castellano remnants are making moves," Tony warned. "They know about Emma and the kid. Word travels, Vin. People are talking about the mighty Moretti going domestic. wondering if you've lost your edge. Vincent's eyes hardened, the crime lord surfacing beneath the father. Let them wonder. Let them make assumptions. Anyone who mistakes love for weakness will learn the difference when I dismantle their organization piece by piece. But Tony's warning proved prophetic. 3 days later, Vincent received a call that stopped his heart. Mr. Moretti? The voice belonged to Sophia's principal, Mrs. Henderson, and her tone carried barely controlled panic. There's been an incident. Sophia is safe, but someone attempted to approach her during recess. Our security intervened, but I think you should come immediately. Vincent was moving before she finished speaking, his phone already dialing his security team. Lock down the school. No one enters or leaves until I arrive. Is Emma there? Mrs. Bennett is in treatment today. You're listed as primary emergency contact. Vincent's driver broke every traffic law getting to the school, where his security team had already established a perimeter that made the principal's office look like a war zone. Sophia sat in Mrs. Henderson's chair, looking small and scared, her eyes lighting up with relief when Vincent entered. Mr. Vincent! She launched herself at him, and Vincent caught her, his heart hammering against his ribs. Are you hurt? He checked her over with hands that wanted to shake, but remained steady through sheer force of will. Did anyone touch you? No. Sophia's voice was small, muffled against his shoulder. But the man said he knew you? He said he had a message about Mommy. Vincent's blood turned to ice. What man? What did he look like? Mrs. Henderson provided security footage, and Vincent's jaw clenched as he recognized the face. Marco Castellano, nephew of the family Vincent had systematically dismantled over the past year. The Castellanos had lost territory, income, and influence. Apparently, they'd decided revenge was worth the war it would start. I want every detail, Vincent told his head of security, his voice deadly calm. Where he went, who he talked to, every breath he's taken since approaching my daughter. And Mrs. Henderson? Effective immediately. Sophia will have personal security during school hours. Non-negotiable. The principal looked like she wanted to argue about school policy and normalcy, but something in Vincent's expression made her nod instead. Of course, Mr. Moretti. Whatever keeps Sophia safe. Vincent took Sophia home, his mind already strategizing responses, calculating consequences, planning how to eliminate the Castellano threat without exposing Sophia to the violence that defined solutions in his world. But first, he had to tell Emma. He found her in the penthouse master bedroom, weak from that morning's treatment, her face gray with exhaustion. When she saw Vincent carrying Sophia, something in his expression made her struggle upright despite the IV still attached to her arm. What happened? Fear sharpened her voice. Vincent, what? Someone from a rival family approached her at school. Vincent set Sophia down gently. Sweetheart, can you go play in your room for a few minutes? I need to talk to your mother. Sophia hesitated, her two perceptive eyes moving between them, reading tension she was too young to fully understand. Am I in trouble? No, baby. Emma's voice cracked. You did nothing wrong. Go on. We'll call you for dinner soon. After Sophia left, Emma turned to Vincent with tears streaming down her face. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Your world is bleeding into hers, Vincent. She's 7 years old and already a target because of who you are, what you do. I'll handle it. Vincent's voice was steel. The Castellanos made a mistake targeting her. They'll learn exactly what that mistake costs. By doing what? Emma challenged. By starting a war? By showing Sophia that violence is how you solve problems? Vincent, I'm dying. In 3 months, maybe less, you'll be all she has. What kind of father will she have if you respond to threats with the same brutality that built your reputation? The accusation hit like a physical blow because Emma wasn't wrong. Vincent's instinct was to destroy the Castellanos completely, to make an example so brutal that no one would ever threaten his daughter again. But that path led to escalation, to violence, to exactly the world Emma had spent 7 years trying to shield Sophia from. Then what do you want me to do? Vincent demanded, frustration and fear making his voice rough. Let them threaten her? Let them use her as leverage? Emma, I can't. I won't. Let anyone harm her. I want you to be smarter than they are. Emma reached for his hand, her grip weak but insistent. You've built an empire on strategy and influence. Use that. Find a way to neutralize the threat without teaching Sophia that her father is exactly the monster people say he is. Vincent stared at her, seeing the plea beneath the challenge, understanding what she was really asking. Emma was preparing Sophia for a life without her, and she needed to believe that Vincent would be the kind of father who solved problems without resorting to the darkness that had defined his adult life. I'll find another way, Vincent promised, the words feeling like surrender and victory simultaneously. But Emma, I need you to trust that keeping Sophia safe is my only priority. Everything else, the empire, the reputation, the power, none of it matters compared to her. Emma's expression softened. I do trust you. That's why I'm asking you to be better than what circumstances made you. Sophia needs a father, not a crime lord. Promise me you'll remember the difference. Over the next 2 weeks, Vincent proved Emma's faith wasn't misplaced. Instead of violence, he used leverage. The Castellanos, it turned out, had financial vulnerabilities, debts to other families, property held through shell companies that didn't withstand legal scrutiny, operations that depended on political connections Vincent could sever with 3 phone calls. He didn't destroy them. He simply made it clear that any further moves against his family would result in total collapse. The message was delivered through intermediaries, backed by evidence of exactly how precarious their position had become, and accompanied by an offer: walk away now, or lose everything they had left. The Castellanos chose survival. It's done, Vincent told Emma one evening as she lay in bed, too weak now to even pretend normalcy. They've agreed to a permanent truce. Sophia is safe. Emma's smile was radiant despite her failing body. You found another way. Vincent, I'm so proud of you. The words shouldn't have mattered so much. Vincent had built an empire, commanded loyalty through fear and respect, made his name synonymous with power. But hearing Emma say she was proud, knowing he'd chosen a path that served his daughter's future rather than his own instincts, felt like redemption. I'm learning, Vincent said quietly, sitting beside her bed and taking her hand. How to be what she needs instead of what I've always been. You're going to be an amazing father. Emma's voice was barely a whisper, exhaustion claiming her. She's so lucky to have you. But as weeks turned into months and Emma's condition deteriorated, Vincent faced a new challenge: preparing Sophia for the loss that was coming while maintaining the stability she desperately needed. They told her together, Emma and Vincent sitting on either side of their daughter, holding her hands while explaining that sometimes people got sick in ways doctors couldn't fix. Sophia cried. They all cried. But through the grief, Vincent saw something remarkable. His 7-year-old daughter possessed a strength and resilience that reminded him exactly why he'd fallen in love with Emma in the first place. Will you stay with me? Sophia asked Vincent through her tears. After Mommy, after she... Will you stay? Forever, Vincent promised, pulling her into his arms. I'm your father, Sophia. That means I'll be here for every moment. Good, bad, scary, and wonderful. You'll never be alone. I promise you that. Emma watched them with tears streaming down her face, and Vincent saw gratitude and grief and love all tangled together. She was letting go, trusting him with the most precious thing in her world, believing he would be enough when she no longer could be. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday that started like any other, Emma slipped away peacefully in her sleep. Vincent held Sophia as she sobbed, his own tears falling into her dark hair, his heart breaking for the loss of the woman who'd given him everything and asked only that he be worthy of the gift. The funeral was small, just Vincent, Sophia, Tony, Mrs. Chen, and a handful of people from Emma's life before illness consumed it. Vincent stood with his daughter pressed against his side, feeling her shake with grief, wondering how anyone so small could contain so much pain. As they lowered Emma's casket into the ground, Sophia turned her face into Vincent's coat. "I don't want to forget her," she whispered. "What if I forget what she sounded like? What if I forget her smile?" "You won't forget." Vincent's voice was rough with emotion. "I'll make sure of it. We'll talk about her every day, share stories and memories, keep her alive in here." He touched Sophia's chest gently, over her heart. "That's where your mother will always live, sweetheart. In your heart. And nothing, not time, not distance, not anything, can take that away." Sophia nodded, her small hand finding Vincent's and gripping tight. "Promise?" "I promise." As they walked away from the grave, Vincent felt the weight of responsibility settle across his shoulders like a mantle. He was a father now, not by choice initially, but by biology and love and promises made to a dying woman who'd trusted him with her greatest treasure. The empire could wait. The business could be delegated. Everything that had defined Vincent Moretti for 33 years suddenly felt insignificant compared to the 7-year-old girl whose hand he held. He had a daughter to raise. And nothing, not rivals, not violence, not the darkness that had shaped him, would stop him from being the father Sophia deserved. Emma's last gift wasn't just Sophia. It was the chance for Vincent to become someone worthy of being loved by them both. The first month without Emma was brutal. Sophia withdrew into herself, speaking only in whispers, eating barely enough to sustain her small frame. She had nightmares that sent her screaming into Vincent's room at 3 a.m., seeking comfort from the only parent she had left. Vincent learned fatherhood through trial and error, discovering that Sophia liked her sandwiches cut into triangles, that thunderstorms terrified her, that reading aloud helped when words failed. He attended grief counseling sessions with her, sat through parent-teacher conferences where he learned Sophia was struggling to focus, rearranged his entire schedule around a child who needed stability more than she needed anything else. Tony watched the transformation with something approaching awe. "The family's asking questions," he reported one evening after Sophia had finally fallen asleep. "About when you're coming back full-time. About whether you're still committed to the business." "Tell them I'm more committed than ever," Vincent replied, not looking up from the email he was composing to Sophia's teacher. "I have a daughter to provide for now. That means the empire needs to run smoothly without requiring my constant attention. Delegate more. Promote people who can handle responsibility. I trust your judgment." "You're really doing this?" Tony shook his head in disbelief. "Choosing her over everything else." "I'm not choosing her over the empire," Vincent corrected. "I'm restructuring my priorities. The business exists to serve my family now, not the other way around. There's a difference." Slowly, painfully, they found their rhythm. Sophia started smiling again, tentatively at first, then with increasing frequency. She talked about Emma without breaking down, shared memories that made Vincent ache with loss for the years he'd missed, but grateful for the time they'd had. 6 months after Emma's death, Sophia came to Vincent with a drawing. It showed 3 figures, a woman with light hair, a girl with dark curls, and a tall man in a suit. Above them she'd written in careful letters, "My family." "Is this us?" Vincent asked, his throat tight. Sophia nodded. "Mommy's still part of our family, right? Even though she's in heaven?" "Always." Vincent pulled her into his lap. "Family isn't just about who's physically here. It's about who lives in our hearts. Your mother will always be part of this family." "Good." Sophia settled against his chest with the contentment of a child who'd found security after too much loss. "Because I love her. But I love you too, Daddy." The word hit Vincent like lightning. Daddy. Not Mr. Vincent. Not even just Vincent. Daddy. The title he'd never expected to claim, never thought he deserved, and now couldn't imagine living without. "I love you too, sweetheart," Vincent managed, his voice breaking. "More than anything in this world." But their peace was threatened when Vincent learned that Marco Castellano, the nephew who'd approached Sophia months earlier, was attempting to rebuild his family's power base. The truce was holding technically, but Marco was making moves that suggested he hadn't forgotten or forgiven Vincent's systematic dismantling of Castellano operations. "He's talking to the Russos," Tony reported grimly, "suggesting an alliance against the Moretti family. Claims you've gone soft, that focusing on your kid has made you vulnerable." Vincent's eyes narrowed. The Russos wouldn't be stupid enough to believe that. "Maybe not, but Marco's convincing. He's painting you as domesticated, distracted. Some of the younger members are listening." Vincent considered the implications. He'd kept Sophia safe by avoiding violence, by using strategy and leverage instead of force. But there was a fine line between appearing measured and appearing weak. If rivals thought Vincent had lost his edge, they might test boundaries he couldn't afford to let them cross. "Set up a meeting," Vincent decided, "with the Russo leadership. Private, neutral territory. I'll remind them exactly why challenging the Moretti family is a mistake, and I'll do it without firing a single shot." The meeting took place in a warehouse that technically belonged to neither family, neutral ground respected by all the major players. Vincent arrived with minimal security, a power move that demonstrated confidence rather than fear. The Russo patriarch, Giovanni, studied him with calculating eyes. "Vincent Moretti," Giovanni said slowly. "I hear you've become a family man. Congratulations on discovering fatherhood." "Thank you." Vincent's tone was pleasant, controlled. "I appreciate you taking this meeting. I understand Marco Castellano has been spreading interesting theories about my current priorities. He suggests you're not the man you once were." Giovanni's bluntness was expected. In their world, dancing around points wasted time and invited misunderstanding. "That your focus on your daughter has created opportunities for those willing to take them." "Marco is young and angry," Vincent replied. "He mistakes adaptation for weakness. I'd hate to see the Russo family make the same error." "Is that a threat?" "It's a clarification." Vincent leaned forward, his eyes hard despite his calm demeanor. "My daughter is my priority, yes. But that doesn't mean I've lost the capacity or willingness to protect what's mine. If anything, having someone I love makes me more dangerous, not less. Because now I have something worth destroying anyone who threatens it." Giovanni studied him for a long moment. "The Marco situation will resolve itself," Vincent said confidently. "Marco's rebuilding efforts are impressive for someone so inexperienced. But he's made strategic errors, financial commitments that won't pay off, alliances with families that can't provide the support he thinks they promised. In 6 months, maybe less, the Castellano remnants will collapse under their own weight. I won't need to lift a finger. And if he moves against you directly, then I'll demonstrate why making me choose between mercy and protection is the last mistake anyone makes." Vincent's voice dropped to that dangerous quiet that had made his reputation. "I've changed, Giovanni. I've become a father, learned to solve problems without defaulting to violence. But don't confuse evolution with weakness. I'm still Vincent Moretti. I still control this city's underground. And anyone who forgets that will learn the lesson once, before they're no longer capable of learning anything at all." The silence stretched, weighted with calculation. Finally, Giovanni nodded. "The Russo family has no interest in Marco Castellano's vendetta. We'll stay neutral in whatever develops." "I appreciate your wisdom." Vincent stood. The meeting concluded. "Give my regards to your family." As Vincent left the warehouse, Tony fell into step beside him. "You really think the Castellanos will collapse on their own?" "They're overextended and underfunded," Vincent confirmed. "Marco's emotional, making decisions based on revenge rather than strategy. He'll destroy himself without my intervention. All I have to do is wait and make sure Sophia stays protected while the situation resolves." But Vincent had miscalculated one crucial element: Marco's desperation. 2 weeks later, Vincent received a call that made his blood run cold. Sophia's school security had intercepted a package addressed to her, discovered during routine screening. Inside, photographs of Sophia on the playground at their building, walking with Vincent, and a note in Marco's handwriting. "Your daughter is beautiful. It would be a shame if something happened to her. Vincent saw red. "Lock down everything," he commanded Tony, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. "I want every person associated with Marco Castellano found within the hour. I want to know where he sleeps, where he eats, who he talks to. And I want security doubled on Sophia. No, tripled. No one gets within 50 feet of her without being vetted by us personally." Tony started, but Vincent cut him off. "He threatened my daughter, Tony, my 7-year-old daughter who just lost her mother. He crossed a line I can't ignore, won't forgive. Emma asked me to be better than my instincts, and I tried. God knows I tried. But some threats require responses that go beyond strategy and patience. What are you going to do?" Vincent's expression was cold, controlled, terrifying in its calm. "I'm going to remind everyone why they used to cross the street when they saw me coming. And then I'm going to make sure Marco Castellano never threatens anyone again." But first, Vincent had to tell Sophia. She was getting older, more perceptive, and he'd promised Emma he would always be honest with their daughter about the realities they faced. He found her in her room, reading, always reading, just like Emma. She looked up as he entered, her smile fading as she read something in his expression. "What's wrong, Daddy?" Vincent sat beside her, choosing his words carefully. "Remember how I told you that my job sometimes involves dealing with difficult people? People who don't play by the rules?" Sophia nodded slowly. "The bad men you have to be careful around. Right. Well, one of those bad men made a very serious mistake. He threatened you, sweetheart, and I need to handle the situation to make sure you stay safe." Fear flickered across Sophia's face. "Will you have to go away?" "No." Vincent pulled her close. "I'll never leave you, but security around you is going to increase for a while. More bodyguards, more precautions. It might feel suffocating, but I need you to trust that it's necessary. Just until the threat is resolved. Are you going to hurt someone?" The question was quiet, cautious, revealing exactly how perceptive his daughter had become. Vincent considered lying, softening the truth, but he'd promised honesty. "I'm going to protect you using whatever methods are necessary. Sometimes that means making hard choices, Sophia. Choices that might seem scary or wrong, but that keep the people I love safe. Do you understand?" Sophia stared at him for a long moment, her blue eyes, Emma's eyes, seeing too much for a 7-year-old. "Mommy said you were a good man who did bad things sometimes. Is that what this is?" "Yes." Vincent's voice was rough. "That's exactly what this is." "Okay." Sophia hugged him tight. "I trust you, Daddy. Just don't go away. Promise you'll come back." "I promise, sweetheart. Always." Vincent kept his promise, but he also kept another, to eliminate threats against his daughter with decisive finality. The resolution happened off-screen, in ways that didn't involve Sophia, in methods Vincent would never discuss with his daughter. But when it was over, Marco Castellano was no longer a problem. The remnants of his family had scattered, and the message was clear. Vincent Moretti's daughter was completely, utterly, permanently off-limits. The price was Vincent's last connection to the man Emma had asked him to become. He'd crossed lines he'd promised to avoid, made choices that served protection over principle. But Sophia was safe, and in Vincent's world, that was the only math that mattered. When he returned home that night, Sophia was asleep, peaceful and secure in her room filled with books and drawings and the carefully preserved memories of her mother. Vincent stood in the doorway, watching her breathe, feeling the weight of his choices settle into his bones. He would never be the perfect father Emma had hoped for, but he would be the father Sophia needed, the one who kept her safe, loved her fiercely, and made whatever sacrifices were necessary to give her the life she deserved. It would have to be enough, because it was all he had to offer. 3 years later, Sophia's 10th birthday dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect spring day that made promises about new beginnings and fresh starts. Vincent stood in the kitchen of their penthouse, attempting to follow a recipe for homemade birthday cake that was proving significantly more challenging than restructuring criminal enterprises. "Daddy, "You're doing it wrong," Sophia observed from her perch on the counter, her legs swinging. At 10, she'd grown into her features, her dark hair reaching her shoulders, her smile bright and frequent. The shadows from losing Emma still lived in her eyes sometimes, but joy had returned, filling the spaces grief had carved. "How can I be doing it wrong?" Vincent demanded, frowning at the mixing bowl. "I'm following the recipe exactly." "You're too tense. Baking requires feeling, not precision." Sophia hopped down and took the spoon from his hand. "Mommy used to say cooking was like art. You had to let your heart guide your hands." Vincent watched his daughter mix batter with confident strokes, seeing Emma in every movement, and felt his throat tighten. 3 years since Emma's death, and the loss still caught him unexpected moments, stealing his breath with memories of what they'd had and what Sophia had lost too soon. "Your mother was wise," Vincent said quietly. "I miss her." "Me too." Sophia looked up, her eyes bright but not sad. "But she's still here, you know? In the way you read to me before bed, in how you always cut my sandwiches into triangles. In moments like this. Mommy's in all the love you give me, Daddy." Vincent pulled her into a hug, marveling at how this small person had taught him more about strength and resilience than 3 decades in the underground ever had. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart," Sophia replied with 10-year-old confidence. "You just finally noticed." The doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of party guests, Sophia's school friends, their parents, and a handful of Vincent's trusted associates who'd become uncles in function if not blood. Tony arrived first, carrying a gift that was clearly enormous and definitely violating the reasonable present guidelines Vincent had established. "It's a telescope," Tony said before Vincent could comment. "She wants to be a vet, but I figure backup plan as astronaut isn't bad." Sophia squealed with delight, throwing her arms around Tony's legs in a hug that made the hardened second-in-command look simultaneously uncomfortable and pleased. Vincent shook his head, but he was smiling. His world had changed in ways he couldn't have predicted. His home filled with children's laughter, his schedule dictated by school events and bedtimes, his priorities completely realigned around a daughter who'd transformed him from crime lord to father without even trying. The party was chaos, 10-year-olds hyped up on cake and games, running through the penthouse while their parents drank wine and made small talk. Vincent found himself actually enjoying it. The normalcy of neighborhood parents discussing homework and summer camps, the simplicity of problems that didn't involve violence or strategy or the weight of empire. As evening fell and guests departed, Sophia collapsed on the couch beside Vincent, her head on his shoulder. "Best birthday ever," she declared. "Thank you, Daddy." "You're welcome, sweetheart." Vincent kissed the top of her head, though I think Tony's telescope might have been the real winner. "The telescope was amazing," Sophia agreed, "but what I really loved was you. The way you tried so hard with the cake, and how you talked to my friend's parents like a normal dad, and just you being here. That's the best present." Vincent's eyes burned. 3 years ago, he'd been a man who built power on fear and reputation, who believed emotional attachment was weakness and love was liability. Then Emma had revealed his daughter's existence, and everything Vincent thought he knew about himself shattered and reformed around a truth he couldn't ignore. Love wasn't weakness. It was the strongest foundation he'd ever built upon. "I love you, Sophia," Vincent said, his voice rough with emotion. "More than I thought I could love anything. You saved me, you know that. Made me into someone better than I deserved to be. You were always good, Daddy." Sophia looked up at him with absolute faith. "Mommy saw it. That's why she trusted you with me. She knew you'd be amazing." Later, after Sophia had fallen asleep clutching a stuffed animal Tony had accidentally included with the telescope, Vincent stood in her doorway and watched her breathe. He thought about Emma, about the impossible gift she'd given him, about the promise he'd made to be the father Sophia deserved. He hadn't been perfect. There were moments when his old instincts surfaced, when he made choices that served protection over principles Emma had wanted him to follow. But he'd been present. He'd loved fiercely. He'd put Sophia first in every decision, every sacrifice, every moment that mattered. Vincent pulled out his phone and opened the photo album he'd created. Hundreds of pictures documenting 3 years of fatherhood. Sophia's first day at her new school, both of them nervous. Her science fair project about animal behavior, which had won second place. Christmas morning, her face bright with joy over presents Vincent had spent weeks selecting. Random Tuesday evenings reading on the couch, comfortable in their shared silence. A life. They'd built a life together. On impulse, Vincent drove to the cemetery where Emma rested. It was late, but security concerns had long since been addressed. Vincent's reputation ensured that anyone targeting his daughter knew exactly what consequences looked like, and 3 years of consistent, overwhelming responses had taught rivals that Sophia Moretti was permanently, absolutely off-limits. He stood before Emma's headstone, the marble gleaming in moonlight, and spoke to the woman who'd changed everything. "She's 10 today," Vincent said quietly. "Beautiful and brilliant and kind in ways that terrify me, because I know how cruel the world can be to people with soft hearts. But she's strong, too. She survived losing you, adapted to life with me, and somehow turned me into an actual father in the process." The wind rustled through trees, and Vincent chose to believe Emma could hear him. "I'm not the man you hoped I'd become," Vincent continued. "I still make hard choices, still protect what's mine with methods you'd probably condemn. But I'm better than I was, Emma. I'm trying every day to be worthy of the gift you gave me, to be the father Sophia deserves, even when I'm not sure I know how." He paused, emotion tightening his throat. "Thank you. For trusting me. For seeing something in me worth saving. For giving me a daughter who taught me that love isn't weakness. It's the most powerful thing I've ever experienced. I wish you were here to see her grow up. She misses you. We both do. But I promise you this. Sophia will always know she's loved. Always know she matters more than empires or power or anything else in this world. That's your legacy, Emma. Not just our daughter, but the man you forced me to become by believing I could be better." Vincent touched the headstone gently, feeling the cold marble beneath his fingers, and made a final promise. "I'll take care of her. I'll love her enough for both of us. And someday when she's old enough to understand, I'll tell her everything. About the woman who gave her life. About the love that defied logic and probability. About the gift that saved us both. She'll know her mother was extraordinary. I'll make sure of it." As Vincent returned to the penthouse, he found Sophia awake, standing in her doorway. "Where did you go?" she asked sleepily. "To visit your mother." Vincent scooped her up, carrying her back to bed. "To tell her about your birthday, about how proud she'd be of the person you're becoming." Sophia nestled against his chest. "Do you think she can hear you?" "I know she can." Vincent tucked her in, smoothing her hair. "And I think she's happy, sweetheart. Happy that we have each other. That we built something beautiful from all that loss." "Daddy?" Sophia's voice was small, thoughtful. "When I grow up, I want to be like Mommy. Kind and strong and brave enough to love people even when it's scary." "You're already like her," Vincent assured her. "In all the ways that matter." As Sophia drifted back to sleep, Vincent sat beside her bed, keeping watch the way he had countless nights over the past 3 years. He thought about the man he'd been before. Ruthless, cold, convinced that emotional attachment was fatal weakness. Then he looked at his daughter, at the life they'd built together, and understood that Emma's greatest gift wasn't just Sophia. It was showing Vincent that monsters could be redeemed by love, that darkness could be transformed by the fierce, protective devotion of fatherhood, that the most powerful empire he'd ever build would be measured in bedtime stories and birthday parties and quiet moments that meant everything. 3 years ago, Vincent Moretti believed he'd lost the capacity to be anything beyond the title and reputation that preceded him. Then, a 7-year-old girl with his eyes and Emma's heart taught him the truth. He'd never been a monster at all. He'd just been waiting for a reason to become human. Sophia was that reason. And every day forward, Vincent would choose her, over empire, over reputation, over the darkness that had defined him for so long. He would be her father, her protector, her example of what love looked like when it refused to give up. It wasn't the life Vincent had planned, it was infinitely better. Outside, dawn broke across the city, painting the sky in shades of hope and possibility. Inside the penthouse, a father watched his daughter sleep and understood that this quiet moment of peace and love and family, was the only empire that truly mattered. Vincent Moretti had finally found his purpose, and her name was Sophia.